Hello, we made it to part 14 in our review of the Chris Watts interrogation. And now that we're at the back end of this thing, it's looking like there might be one more video after this. I want to say thank you to everyone who's been following along. It's been great reading the comments and to see a lot of the same names come into the comments section. It's made it feel like a little community that came together to make sense out of the nonsense. It's a cathartic feeling and it's been great. Sometimes I'll say, hey, where's so-and-so been? But on the subject of nonsense, we're getting into Chris's new story. And now that Ronnie's out of the room, Graham and Tammy can start picking that apart as well and getting to some more truth. And the interesting thing about Chris's new story and the new mask he's wearing that we covered is that who Chris really is consistently pulling the rug out from underneath who Chris is pretending to be. And then Chris is just like left on his ass on the ground saying, I wasn't on the carpet. I wasn't on the carpet at all. No, I wasn't on the carpet. Well, we're looking at you falling down on the carpet. So it can be infuriating at times to see how transparent he is and yet how persistent he is with his lies and sticking to his story. Just enraging. But Graham sets the tone with, it's strange because even though Graham and Tammy have been guessing most of the details of who Chris is and what he did, most of the general details, they've been guessing these in real time while talking to Chris as the situation is shifting and unfolding, which has been quite the feat. But they're still being fooled by Chris's mask because it's so persistent. So when Chris points to the map of Survey 319 where he disposed of the bodies and he indicates that Cece and Bella are in the tanks, Graham is incredulous because he says, are they in the tanks? You know, even having guessed that Chris is a monster who just got rid of the old life so he could start up the new life with his hot young girlfriend, this detail caught him off guard. And I think I'll get into that one later, why that would catch someone off guard. But Graham and Tammy cannot be as critical as they are in their own minds. They have to be gentle, and we all know watching that when stuff is about to go down, when Graham calmly, non-confrontationally says, can we keep talking about some difficult things? Some things that are going to make you uncomfortable? He's lulling Chris into this compliant state, but all of us watching are like, oh yeah, now he's going to get some truth out of him. But of course, what we get is more nonsense because now they're going to pick apart Chris's new story. And so far, I've been offended by Chris as a human being, as a man, as a father, as a son, and as a husband. Now, at the back end, as he gets into his new story, I'm offended by Chris as a storyteller because this storytelling is just completely rotten. And if you enjoyed my book reviews elsewhere on this channel, this is a little bonus for you because I'm going to do a little book review of Chris's new story and analyze it in the same way, except this one will be a lot more negative because the other books I actually enjoyed to some extent, and this one has got more holes than a pincushion, and the big hole is big enough to fit Chris's ego through. So I'll sum up, because I have the benefit of hindsight and 20/20 vision and all the details coming out afterwards. And everything that Chris says raises multiple questions, and Tammy and Graham in real time can only ask one question at a time. So they're doing good with the situation that they're in. But I can point out all the reasons his lame-ass story makes no sense and why he consistently pulls the rug out from under himself. So, number one, Chris indicates that he first knew something was wrong, that Shanann was doing something wrong, when he makes a noise on the table of Shanann running across the upstairs while he was downstairs packing his lunch and getting ready to leave after the emotional conversation. And he makes a noise on the table like, and well, that must have been her running from her room to the kid's bedroom to strangle him. Well, and he just leaves it at that, expecting that will be enough, because he's expecting his dad's reply of immediately believing anything he says and then jumping in with his own details to support the lame story. But everyone who isn't like that is probably wondering, well, Chris, why would that not alert you? Because he says after he heard that sound of running across the upstairs, he didn't think it twice about it and he kept going along with his morning routine. But does Shanann regularly run across the upstairs like that from room to room at 4:30 in the morning after 2 hours of sleep? That did not tell you that something was up? I'm going in the universe of the story he created, by the way, not what really happened. And because he has only put this story together since Graham first started the victim blaming of Shanann about an hour ago, and then Tammy followed that up by giving Chris the idea that, did Shanann do something to the girls and then you did something to her? Only since that, about an hour ago, that was mentioned to Chris, and then he's been making up this story compulsively since then. And now all of his plot holes are becoming very clear, that he didn't think this through, and it wouldn't make sense anyway because he's trying to perform the role of a human being with empathy, which he doesn't have. He doesn't know how to perform that role. So you would hear your wife, after she's been asleep for 2 hours and you've just had an emotional conversation, running across the upstairs at 4:30 in the morning, and you would just go about your business and keep making your breakfast and go up and talk to her later when you're done. So clearly that makes no sense in the real world. Does she regularly get exercise up there, run in circles, do jumping jacks? When he finally did finish making his breakfast and his protein shake and everything else he's repeated 4 times, he, for some reason, wants to go up again, I guess to make her have more mascara tears running down her face with another emotional conversation. Doesn't give any reason why. I just wanted to go up and talk to her again. And he first, this is all in his story, in the universe of his new story, not reality. So he says he went into the master bedroom to talk to her again, even though he heard her running around. He would go into the master bedroom. And he saw on the monitor of the kids' rooms from the master bedroom, in black and white, the image of Bella laying sprawled out in bed, not moving. And right away he knew that she was dead. Because then the monitor switched over to Cece's room and he saw Shanann in Cece's bed on top of Cece. So right away he ran in there and he knew she was murdered. So let me get this straight. At nighttime, you saw your child laying in bed not moving, and your first thought is, she's dead. My wife murdered her. You must have been having heart attacks every night you looked at that monitor, because, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody who's laying in bed at night not moving is sleeping, and your first thought is they're dead? And you can't use the excuse that she was blue because it was black and white. Geez, it's a good thing Chris never worked the night shift at a hospital. Nurse, we have another patient laying in bed, not moving. Mark the time of death at 2 a.m. Take her to the morgue. Morgue is full. Bring her right to the incinerator. And don't tell the family, because I don't think they could cope with that. Yeah, I think the mortality rate would skyrocket at that hospital. So, because he sees his 4-year-old daughter laying in bed at 4:30 in the morning, not moving, and immediately deduces that she's dead, he runs into Cece's room and sees Shanann on top of Cece and right away deduces that Shanann is choking her to death. But they have the CCTV footage of the room, and Tammy has Chris point to the room and kind of draw out how it took place. And it turns out that Chris would have come up from behind and Shanann's body would be blocking CC. So how would you determine that she's choking the life out of her when you can't even see CC and you can't see what Shanann's doing? You're coming up behind on Shanann's full-grown body on top of the 3-year-old daughter's body. Could she have been whispering to her, running her fingers through her hair, taking her temperature, tucking her in? Talk about going from 0 to 100 right away. Just, she's on top of Cece and Bella's not moving. Arrgh! Even if that story is true, you're a maniac for reacting that way, and you should be locked away forever. If you can go to temper and then right back to 0 again afterwards, you should be locked away forever. That's no excuse. That's no cover story. You're not the hero. You're a maniac. If that's true, but of course we know it's not true. So, if you think those were bad, we have the biggest plot hole of all, and one of the most egregious examples of a character betraying their own logic that I've ever seen in any fictional story, let alone something that a guy's trying to come up with for real life. And that is the detail that he did not call 911. He has, within the space of a minute, seen his daughters not moving in the middle of the night in bed and determined that they're dead and that his wife murdered them. And right away, so he's not late for work, he just wraps everyone up in a sheet and drives them to his work site. He tossed them in a truck, drove them right to work, and right away hid the bodies, and then he was acting normally to his coworkers and has been acting normally ever since, not shedding a single tear about it. So, to immediately accept that your closest family members are all dead and dispose of their bodies so callously and then act completely normal, unbothered, and innocent for 3 days, once again, to go from 0 to murder that quickly and then right back to 0 after the job is all cleaned up, he should be locked up forever. So, yeah, you can imagine Graham and Tammy's frustration trying to get to the bottom of that little clusterfuck of a story. And they're trying, and Chris says maybe the most dishonest thing, ironically, as he's trying to back up his story that makes no sense in all the reasons we just mentioned. He says, everything I've told you has been the truth. And of course, what Grammy and Tammy don't ask is, since when? Where's the line between everything that came out of your mouth was deceptive and now everything is the truth? Where was that line? Because I'm not seeing it. So, how much time we got? I think I'll have to save the rest for later. Well, maybe we can get in one more thing, because Graham and Tammy are now defending Shanann because Chris is sticking to the story that she did it. And Tammy says, it seems like she was a pretty good mom. And of course, Chris, only thinking about himself and caring about himself, says, he was a pretty good dad as well. Well, this brings up the issue of, was Chris actually a good father? Because a lot of people look at the home videos and say, well, he was a good dad before he murdered them. Well, he went through the motions of being a good father for 4 years, but he disqualified himself from consideration when he murdered all of them. Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in one game. It was one of the greatest performances of an individual in a basketball game in the history of the NBA. But if a third of the way into the game he had just gotten tired of his teammates and strangled all of them, he would have been disqualified and arrested, and he wouldn't have been the great basketball player that scored 100 points in the game. He would have been the murderer for the rest of his life, and the game would have been stricken from the record. So maybe Chris was on his way to scoring of the 100-point game of fatherhood, but he disqualified himself by murdering everybody. his game doesn't count anymore. I'm sorry. He went through the motions, but it doesn't count anymore. And that will be, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we'll have to save the rest for later. We're going to wrap it up in part 15. There's a couple more unanswered questions to go over, some big issues, and I don't want to get into them right at the end, so I'll see you next time in part 15.